Hi, Mark the Monarch Man, aka Fussy, and welcome to the first edition, and hopefully not the last, of Live with Fussy. And what this is all about, this is about helping you get some great tips on your paint projects to make painting easy, because it really is if you get the right tips. Now, a couple of things to bear in mind here. If you've got questions, it's a live chat. So send them in to us while we're doing the program. We'll answer your questions and we'll help make painting more successful for you. But what I want to do is give you a couple of professional painters' tips that us guys do before we start painting. Firstly, I've got an old paint can here. You can see it's not brand new. And I want to show you the correct way, as basic as it seems, to open a paint can. Because what a lot of guys do is they go to the garage, they grab a screwdriver and they ruin the lid of the can opening it with a screwdriver. I'm going to use a professional tool called a 5-in-1 multi-tool. And as the name suggests, it's got a variety of uses. And the first one is the fantastic thick edge at the bottom, which helps you open your can. And when you open your can, work your way around it. Don't force it, and then the lid is going to come off a lot easier. So keep working your way around and the lid will pop off. Now, two things happen with that. I haven't damaged that rim by using a screwdriver. What that means is when I go to put the paint away when I'm finished and I go to put my lid back on, it'll seal properly because the rim is not damaged. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I said it was old paint. So what inevitably happens is you get old crusty little bits of paint all over the lid, and I'm going to show you how to get rid of those shortly. But first, I often get asked, if I've got an old can of paint, how do I know if it's any good? Very simple exercise, which I call the smell test. Smell your paint, and trust me, if it smells like your old man's socks and he's worn them for 4 days in the garden, don't use it. I smell that and I go, I love the smell of paint in the morning. That's ready to use, it's perfect. So the smell test, guaranteed. Now another thing. You haven't used the paint for a long time. Mixing paint is critical. And again, don't use a screwdriver, guys. Get yourself what's called a flat stirring stick. And these come in a variety of sizes, from small to 1 and 4 litre cans to the larger one that I like for larger cans. But I still use the larger can one for any size can because the wider, the better. So when you stir your paint, flat stick is perfect. Now there's a way to stir it, by the way. You don't go round and round. The motion is a scooping motion. Why? Because you're scooping paint from the bottom of the can to the top, and that is going to mix paint properly. So when I do it, I want to hear clunk, 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 which is the stirring stick hitting the bottom of the can. That way, I'm stirring it with that motion and all the tinter is mixing in and the paint is going to be an accurate colour. And you do it for a couple of minutes. Now, how do you tell the colour's right? Lift your stick out, have a good look at it. All the paint pouring off there and in the can. It's a uniform colour. We're good to go. So, let me get my paintbrush out. And here's a handy little tip about paintbrushes, by the way. I've moistened it in 1 inch of water for about 15 to 20 minutes before I use it. Spin out the excess water. Why do we do that? Paint's wet. If your brush is moist, it's going to work better. And of course, we want to use a lovely quality brush. Now, we're going to wipe off that paint from our stirring stick. I know I've mixed that up beautifully and that paint is all one consistent colour, which is fantastic. So now what we're going to do is work out how much paint do we put in our roller trays and how much paint do we put in our paint pot. Here's a great tip. Firstly, start off with our paint pot. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to use my paintbrush as a guide to explain a great tip to you. A lot of people dip their whole brush in paint when they're using it. The top half just dries out. You only need to use the bottom half of your brush when you load it. So to do that, that's how much paint I want in my paint pot. I don't want to put some paint in a roller tray and walk around with a half full can. It's dangerous, and if you spill it, it's going to take a long time to clean it up. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to pour about 1 inch of paint into my paint pot. Now, the benefit of that is when I sit my brush in the paint, it's only about halfway up at best. And another benefit is when I'm not using the brush, don't do what what everybody tends to do and leave it sitting on top of the pot, because you go and have lunch or you have a break, on a hot day that's going to dry out, and then that's going to make the brush struggle to do what it should do. Leave it standing in the paint, and as you can see, it's only halfway up at best. It keeps moist and doesn't dry out. Great little tip as well while we're doing this. I'll pop that down. You noted I poured paint out of my old pot and there's paint all over the place. So what a painter's going to do is he's going to wipe as much of that paint off the side and get it all out of the rim of the can. That is also going to help me store it better, because the lid will go in and there won't be a big, thick, luggy bit of paint. So we're going to go and put paint in our roller tray next. But before we do that, I mentioned the fact that we had old paint. Michelle's going to give me a hand here. I've got a pair of stockings here. Steve, the producer, thanks very much, mate, for taking those off. Really appreciate that. Michelle's going to cut a little bit of our stocking for us here. And then the little tip we're going to do, so you end up with a piece about this long.
The scissors don't work, Fussy.
Wow, there we go. Thanks for those, Stevie. Now, you've got a piece about that long, and what I'm getting Michelle to do is tie a knot in one end. This is going to act like a filter. Now, all these little cruddy bits of paint that were on the lid, some of them have fallen into the can, some have dried because it's old. What I want to do, they call me fussy for a reason. I want to get a perfect finish on my walls when I paint. I don't want little crusty bits. So, we've tied the knot in the end. Michelle's going to hold the stocking.
Don't get paint on.
I'm going to pour paint all over her hands, because this is a great opportunity. We're going to pour paint into the middle. Now what's going to happen is, as I pour that paint in, it's going to start to filter through the bottom of the stocking. And what it's doing while it's doing that is all those hard, crusty bits are staying in the stocking. What's coming through here is absolutely clean, pure, beautiful paint. Thank you, I'll take that. We'll give that a little bit of a bob up and down to let that paint go through there. So anytime you've got old paint and you want to use it, that's fine, but don't just chuck it straight in a roller tray or pot. Do the strain test, and what it's going to do for you is it's going to give you absolutely beautiful, fresh paint. Okay, perfect. So, I told you how much paint to put in your paint pot. Now I'm going to explain how much to put in the tray. So you need to pretend here that everything in this has been strained. I'm going to pour this in here. And basically a roller tray has two parts, folks. It has what's called the grill of the tray, which is the bit at the top that you use to work your roller in, and I'll explain that in a second. And then the bottom part where the paint goes is called the paint well. When you fill up the tray, fill it up where the well is and don't fill it up onto the grill. Now if you have a smaller roller tray, the same principle applies, because sometimes when you're doing walls and ceilings you want a bigger tray with a lot of paint. But if I'm doing a small project like doors, these smaller little trays are fantastic. They still have a grill, but the well is much smaller. Same principle applies. Get your paint, pour it into the well of the tray, which is a lot thinner, and again, we're not painting much, so that's all you need. And I still have plenty of room to work the roller up and down that beautiful grill of the tray. So depending on the size of your roller tray, work with the well only. So now, what we do now is work on, okay, how do I load a brush and how do I load a roller? So, seeing we've got the roller tray here, let's start with that first. Get out my beautiful Monarch Walls and Ceilings roller. This is a microfiber roller. Microfiber, fantastic. We're going to put that on our roller frame. And remember, if you've got questions, send them in and we'll answer them as we go. So I'm starting off here. You can see clearly the roller has no paint on it. But what I've done with this roller, remember with the brush, I moistened it before I used it. What I've done here is, I've rinsed this roller under a tap for a minute or two. I've squeezed out as much water as I can. The last critical step is pop it on your roller frame, spin it a couple of times down your wall to get the excess moisture out, wipe the wall dry, and you're good to go. Now, loading the roller. What I'm going to do here is, I'm going to go down and be touching the paint with my roller. A roller tray is not a swimming pool. What I don't want to see is the ends of the roller underneath the paint. Why? Because when they get covered, you start rolling a wall and it flicks paint all over the place, which is annoying. So what we do, touch the paint in the well, run it up and down the grill of the tray, and what's going to happen with this motion is the roller's going over and over and over. It's loading the roller beautifully. You can even turn it over, and what happens is you have a loaded roller with nothing on the ends. Beautiful and ready to go. Now, I think we've got a question coming through. Okay, Michelle has said, what is microfiber and why should I use it? Fantastic question. When we talk rollers, the buzzword in rollers nowadays is the fabric, which is this, called microfiber. We have a whole range of microfiber rollers for different projects. Microfiber is fantastic because it does three things. Number one, simple to use. So it doesn't matter if you're a novice or you're a professional, microfiber is an easy fabric to use. Number two, it delivers a smooth finish every single time, and that's what people want to do. They want to get that lovely smooth finish. And thirdly, unlike budget rollers, it doesn't lose little bits of fluff coming off it and going all over your wall, which ruins your painting. Microfiber, absolutely brilliant. So, let's put that down on the floor. We'll go back to our pot. How do we load our paintbrush? So, we don't do what a lot of guys I see do, and load as much paint onto your brush because they think that's going to be great, the more paint I hold the better. No, because the next mistake they make to stop it dripping is they wipe it because they're scared it's going to drip. And you know what they've done now? They've wiped all the paint off the brush. What does a painter do? We have another question coming through, by the way. Okay, from Jess, what size brush should I use when painting walls? Great question. Generally speaking, this is a great brush from Monarch called a Walls, Doors, Trims, and it comes in three different sizes here for a start. Big, wide one, 75mm, middle, 63mm, and a 50, the smallest. Every guy I know will pick up the large one. Why? More paint, get the job done faster. You need to remember one thing, if you don't paint a lot, the bigger the brush, the harder it is to use because it holds more paint. Generally for me, I prefer people to use either the 50mm or the 63mm, so the small and the medium size. Why? They still hold enough paint to get the job done beautifully, and you'll get more precision and control because it's smaller. All right, we have another question coming in from Matt. Great tips. It's hot when I'm painting. Can I put water in my paint to thin it out? Okay, that's a great question, Matt. And I'll say a little bit, be careful. Because basically when I tell people to put water in their paint to thin it out, they end up making it so thin that they can't use it. When people make paint, whether it's Dulux, Taubmans or quality paint manufacturers, they're actually making paint that is designed to be used straight out of the can. However, sometimes when I'm painting with a product called water-based enamel that you use on doors, etc., when it's really hot, I find that product goes off really fast. So there are some additives you can buy. One is called Flow-Trol, which by the name Flow-Trol helps paint flow, but you must follow the guidelines, and it will say in 1 litre of paint, add 100ml to 150ml of Flow-Trol. No more, because if you put too much in, you are going to thin out the paint too much. So there are some additives, but read the suggested recommended guidelines. Getting back to the brush. So those guys that overload their paintbrush and then wipe it all off, that's crazy. What I do is, and I'll show you, remember I said you only need half the brush loaded with paint. So a painter dips it in like that. Then what the painter does is he taps it on the side of the can a couple of times. It's still got plenty of paint on there. In fact, we call that a loaded brush. Now when I go to cut in with a beautiful tapered filament brush like this, I'm going to get absolutely sensational control. And when I'm not using it, leave it standing in the paint. Another question coming through. Okay, Kelly has asked, how much paint do I need if I'm painting my bedroom? Okay, great question. If we talk about standard bedroom is roughly 3.5 metres by 3.5 metres. You need to consider you've got 3 areas. You've got the ceilings, which you do first, by the way. You've got your wall areas, which you'll do second. And then thirdly and lastly, you've got what we call the woodwork, your windows, your door frames and your doors. To go through each of those, remember we're going to do 2 coats. Now you might be lucky enough to get away with 1 coat, but generally 2 coats is always better because you get consistent colour and it always covers better that second coat. On ceilings, you're going to use roughly 1 litre to 1.5 litres per coat. So 2 coats, 2.5 to 3 litres will do ceilings in the average bedroom, 2 coats beautifully. When you go to do your walls, that's what we call a 4 litre can of paint. Now I've heard people go into a paint store and the guy behind the counter goes, oh, you want to know how much paint you use? Well, 1 litre of paint does 16 square metres. Whoopee, whoopee. No one knows what that is. So what you want to do is use this as a general guide. The average bedroom walls will get 2 coats of paint applied to them using a 4 litre can of paint. So for example, if you've got 2 bedrooms to paint, walls, you need 8 litres. As a guide, 4 litre can will get you 2 coats on your walls. When you go to do your woodwork, you're going to need about 1 litre per coat on your frames and your windows and your doors. So again, 2 litres will generally get your trims done in a bedroom. Another question. Where can I buy Monarch brushes? Alex is asking. Well, Alex, Monarch's being such a quality brand, you can get them from any reputable paint accessory stockist. So that can be a hardware store like a Bunnings, independent paint stores. Everybody knows they've got to keep a quality brand like Monarch. Okay, now the next thing I want to talk about is, people always say to me, I don't want to buy good brushes and rollers, I've got to wash them out, I'm going to use stuff and throw it away. Here's a great tip. Buy a quality brush, quality roller, and I'm going to show you how to store it so you don't have to wash it out in between coats. 2 of my best friends, cling wrap. So what I'm going to do here is get a little bit of cling wrap. Let's say I've painted all day today. I've kept my brush moist because I never had it sitting on top of the can. So what I do is I just load it up as if I'm going to use it, wrap it up in some cling wrap, and overnight that is all you need to do. Now for the roller, we're going to do exactly the same thing. We've got a question coming through while I'm doing this, so far away. Let's have a look and see what it is. Chris has said, Fussy, great advice and enjoying the live stream. I'm left-handed. Do they make a left-handed brush? Chris, you're out of luck. Get a painter who's right-handed. Now the benefit is brushes and rollers are made for left-handed and right-handed people. The old apprentice used to get sucked in on paint jobs because on his first day the boss would say to him, go and get me out of the truck one of my left-handed brushes. Now the apprentice didn't want to feel like a fool, so he'd go out in the ute and he'd be looking around and he goes, I can't find a left-handed brush. Sucked in, left-hand, right-handed, brushes and rollers are perfect for either. Now, I loaded those products, the roller and the brush, I wrapped them in cling wrap. Overnight, that's all you need to do, folks. Don't wash them out. Next day, get up, unwrap the cling wrap, keep painting. You haven't wasted water and you haven't wasted paint. Now, what about, I know what you're thinking, you paint on the weekend, you do your job during the week. So come Saturday, you're still okay, but Sunday, they're going to go hard. I've got to wash them out Sunday night. No, you don't. Load them with paint, wrap them in cling wrap, exactly like I did there. Then my other best friend, alfoil, and Mrs. Fussy loves this stuff. She puts it on top of the food to keep it all moist so it doesn't, dry out. And all you do is wrap up your brush. We'll quickly wrap up our roller. And then these, just store them somewhere nice and cool like your garage. They'll be fine all week. Okay, what I want to do is say thank you for watching in. I hope you got some tips and tricks out of this. If you're looking for more tips and tricks, why not go to the Monarch website? Monarch Painting, that's one word, monarchpainting.com.au. There's lots of tips and tricks all over that website. In fact, have a look at our latest House of Monarch. There's some sensational little tips all over that. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Welcome to the House of Monarch. I'm Mark the Monarch Man. They call me Fussy. I'm an ex-professional painter and I'm super fussy about painting. And I love to give tips and tricks to get that professional finish.
I'm Amy. I'm a tradie with a flair for design. I'm passionate about renovation and love getting my hands dirty.
We've got a hold of this family home. The family's outgrown it and it's in need of some TLC.
We're going to renovate it, open it up and style it room by room.
Together, we're going to show you how easy it is to declutter with the perfect storage solutions.
Freshen up a